Hear me? Oh, yeah, I suppose now it works. Hi, everyone. My name is Marcin, and I'm a co-founder of RedStone and EVE Warsaw. I hope you still have some power and brain consciousness in order to listen about oracles. Before I start, I would like to warm you up a little bit with a small question. Who knows how the oracles operate? Raise your hand, please. Okay, let's say it's like 15 to 20% of the people over here, so I will try to also run through the basics. So to kick it off, I'm going to tell you a bit more about RedStone. So we are a company that started in early 2021. Last year, we raised $7 million from prominent Web3 investors. We are a team of 22 people from Poland mainly. Our Oracle specializes in price data as for now, because that's where the demand is, but it's also adjusted for other types of data. For example, over here, you can see a prototype of lens score. So calculating a score of a specific address based on the activity on lens, and then delivering it to smart contract that you can create, for example, anti-bot, anti-spam, or any reward system based on a score that lens gives you. Last year, we've been to, I don't know, like 30, maybe 40 conferences, because our approach is like developer first. So we go, we talk with people, we try to interact, get feedback, understand what is cooking, what is new. We always try to be up to speed with what's happening in the industry. And as I said, right now we are 22 people very dedicated to building the infrastructure. Therefore, 75% of our team are engineers. I'm the black sheep. I'm not coding, but believe me, I do my best to understand, like from time to time, the PRs that go into our GitHub. Last week, actually, we announced a couple of prominent builders from the space, like backing us as well. For example, Stani, Sandeep, Alex Gluchowski from ZK Sync, Emin from Avalanche, guys from Lido, Coinflip from GMX, Richard, founder of QuantStamp and founder of Quantum, which shows that there is a need for diversification in oracles and that our model can truly make a difference. We also were featured at the Defiant last week with Tegan Klein. So if after this presentation you think what we build is fairly cool, over there we go a bit more into how it all started and how we position ourselves in the Oracle space, of course, with Chainlink being a dominant player, and a bit more like a deeper store over there. So now, as not everyone over here knows, let me break down what an oracle is in simple terms. So oracles deliver various types of data on-chain for smart contracts and dApps. That would be probably like a one-sentence summary. So you have various sources of data, you have an oracle, and then you have various ecosystems towards which the data is transmitted so that dApps, builders, smart contracts can utilize that for any sort of application. And now, the title of the presentation is about misconceptions, tips, and tricks. I'm going to talk about it during the presentation without mentioning which are them. And at the end, I'm going to summarize. So, in fact, oracles right now specialize in price feed. The reason for that is because there is a demand for that in DeFi. So if you're a new person coming into Web3, someone can tell you, oh yeah, oracles delivers, I don't know, personal data, results of elections, any kind of data you want on chain. Yeah, true. Actually, like the reality is mainly price feed, and many times it's like in minutes intervals or even like days intervals, so it's not too quick. Therefore, in our view, how majority of oracles work right now is similar to modems in the 80s. So they create like a simple use cases, but if you want to make something more sophisticated, it's impossible. So imagine a TradFi guy coming to Web3 right now or DeFi and hearing, hey, yeah, so we update the price feed of this asset every 24 hours. He would be like, what the heck? I mean, in TradFi, like milliseconds, like truly as quick as possible is necessary and important. So on that kind of infrastructure, we cannot build the future of financial system. We need to like rethink the whole design. That's our approach. So how the flow of majority of oracles work is that you have node operators that have data like from various sources. They push it on-chain to many ecosystems, for example, Ethereum, Avalanche, Layer 2s, and so on. And then a smart contract of a dApp, let's say Aave, on a specific chain, communicates with the smart contract of the Oracle, and the communication happens on chain. And when the user makes a transaction, it's settled, right? Not much rocket science, and you can easily understand that the same data has to be pushed to many ecosystems. So if the future is going to be omni-chain or omni-layer 2 or whatever, not just one ecosystem, it creates friction and additional cost. I guess simple as that. So what is the result of such a design is that oracles are non-scalable because you have cost that you face on many ecosystems, so you cannot go broad with assets that you provide because then the costs are going to eat you up. And the update interval is very long because every update you have to pay the gas, so you try to make the interval short enough that it's usable and as long as possible so that you don't pay that much in the cost. And they lack cross L1s and L2s interoperability because not only you encounter the cost of updates on every chain, also on every chain you have to build like a dedicated smart contract infrastructure. And you know, it's the block times differ, like the execution environment differ, like the language differs. So there's a lot of friction over there. So right now, DeFi potential is limited by oracles, especially on L2s like ZK Sync, Arbitrum, Polygon, ZK EVM, and speed-oriented chains like Avalanche. So now I'm going to give you some food for thoughts about these misconceptions. 3 questions. The first one is, who requires data? Is it like the chain, L1 or L2, or the dApp? And the simple answer is, it's the dApp that requires data for their smart contracts logic, right? So going a step forward, if you push data on-chain and no dApp uses that, it's just waste. It's nothing else than waste. Then the second question is, can we deliver data to dApps omitting on-chain storage? Because we already understood that dApps are the ones that require it. And we can deliver data directly to dApps omitting on-chain storage. This is possible. However, right now, a lot of designs of dApps still require the on-chain delivery. So if they require on-chain delivery, can we change the variables, like the conditions upon which the data is delivered? Because currently, it's either a heartbeat, so an interval, or a deviation threshold, so a specific deviation upon which the data is updated. So can we make it more on-demand, so when it's needed, or optimize that part? And actually, yes. So if we cannot go directly to dApp, we have to still push it on-chain. We can still play with the conditions upon which the data is updated. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the cost of 1 gigabyte of storage on various chains. And as you know, originally blockchains weren't created for storage. Actually, like storage was one of the actions that was heavily penalized, usually when developers were building some stuff. So 1 gigabyte of storage in Bitcoin costs approximately $2.7 million. On Ethereum, it's like $80 million. It's crazy much. And then you have some other networks that specialize in storage. Probably you know a couple of them, like Filecoin and Arweave. And actually, in our case, we are very close with the Arweave team, and we utilize their infrastructure because it's truly optimized for the storage and permanent storage, so that we don't have to worry that the data, once transmitted, is going to disappear in a short future. So on Arweave, it costs $3 to store 1 gigabyte of data. Of course, it varies, but it's just to show you the magnitude of difference. And going even farther, I'm going to tell you a bit about cold data on EVMs, because we specialize on EVM layer 1s and layer 2s. And this is from Ethereum white paper. Like Ethereum and EVMs is basically the game between the states, and then you have transactions in the middle. And the really nice part that many developers forget about is that every transaction on EVM has this field called cold data, which usually is used to transmit some arguments for the function, but you can also add some other payloads over there. So for example, like small packages of data or other stuff. Usually, like rollups use it also for transmitting like the proofs or any other stuff they want to transmit to the layer 1. Why it's important? Because this piece of the transaction is cheap. Usually when people think about architecture in Web3 and DeFi, they're like, oh, this is cool, this is nice, this is sexy, but they don't think about what's expensive, what's not. And then sometimes, if you are not a whale, usually you don't want to pay, let's say, $100 or $200 for a transaction in Ethereum when the gas is high, right? So if you're a protocol designer, you should also think about the cost that the end user is going to incur. And here's like a simple price list. You can see that the call data byte is fairly cheap in comparison to other actions. So if you keep the bytes fairly small, you can end up having a small bill on a gas when it comes to the transaction. So now this is like the most important slide on the infrastructure of ours, I suppose, as RedStone, because our original idea was to create the on-demand oracle. So we deliver price feeds only when it's needed, so minimize the waste. So follow me. In our system, we don't have node operators that blindlessly just take data from whatever and push it on-chain. We rather have data providers. So these are like the entities that specialize in price discovery. So market makers, specialized companies that source data. And then they send, in our model, signed data packages to data delivery network, which is like an off-chain component. So it's not a blockchain, it's like an off-chain architecture. You can think of it as like a decentralized cache layer that keeps data for a short period of time with these signed packages. And then the first idea that we had how to deliver that data on-chain is when a user of a dApp, for example, Aave, makes an interaction with a protocol, with the interface, he or she sends a transaction, then the front end of Aave can fetch this signed data package, quickly attach the data package to the transaction of the user, and then send it to the destination chain, so that it's just used for the transaction it's needed, and also on the ecosystem that it's needed. So if the user uses it on Avalanche or Arbitrum, then it's sent only there, because that's when it's necessary. And it works out of the box on all EVM chains, because every EVM has this call data type, like feature in a transaction. But we also confirmed that it's possible to do outside of EVMs. The first one was a Starknet ecosystem that we made an integration for, second, the Fuel. And right now we are pretty excited because we go for the first time outside of the Ethereum ecosystem, and we are starting working on a TON connector for Telegram Open Network. If you want to play around like how it works on practice on various chains, you can just go to showroom.redstone.finance, and then there are many networks. It usually works well on desktop, on mobile. There might be some problems. And one narrative we also want to push towards the market is that in 2023 and forward, there is no more narrative, one solution fits it all. Like the Oracle as a concept came into existence when we still had just Ethereum or Ethereum killers or whatever, but rather like one network. So it wasn't truly designed to be omni-chain, and also with new DeFi, more sophisticated DeFi and Web3 applications. Therefore, after figuring out in last year our core model, like on-demand model that I explained to you, we encountered that many developers have different needs. So it's not like this is a solution to everything. Some dApps really like it and can use it, but some require still this on-chain data or have different requirements when it comes to the Oracle. Therefore, we, with this off-chain component, also created the RedStone Classic model, which is like the model where you create a relayer, like a bot, that takes signed data packages from this data delivery network and then sends it again upon specific requirements on-chain. And the beauty of that is, usually oracles have this specification of a heartbeat and deviation threshold per chain. So if you build on Arbitrum a perp, lending, or any other use case, they all use the same data on a specific chain. And this approach is dApp specific, because we want to have dApp first approach. So we go to the dApp, we ask them what are the conditions upon which they want to update the prices on chain, and then we deliver it as it's needed. The third one that is, so the 1 and 2 are production ready and are already used. The third one is something new that we co-designed with GMX. And it's a very interesting model where you have a deferred settlement model. So the transaction is recorded on block N and then executed on the very next block. Why? In order to omit front running. Because on perpetuals, actually, one of the biggest problem is the front running of the users. So in order to omit it, we execute the transaction with a slight delay in comparison to other protocols. So the last one is important because when the whole DeFi space crumbles, goes down, the specific areas like derivatives, perps, options, LSTs right now as well, grow in value. I don't want to go into specifics into this RedStone X model, but if that sounds interesting and you're building a perp, I'm happy to explain it more in detail afterwards. How it looks in MetaMask, like this package. So you as a user actually can see it. Everything is transparent. So if you go to your MetaMask and you go to the hex section, you're going to see that there is a special payload, and with the signature and this data package, what's going on, you can basically figure it out. But on the cost side, you're going to pay a very, very small premium, because we did a year of work, truly a year of heavy development to optimize the gas cost. It's a very low-level assembly script code in order to make this invisible from the UX perspective of a user. So for example, on Ethereum, you would pay something like, I don't know, 2 additional cents for having this payload. So it doesn't matter if you pay $20 for a transaction, right? So for many price feeds we pull from multiple sources. For example, for Ethereum, we have 40 sources. That design also allows us, as I said, to have more horizontal spread when it comes to feeds that we deliver. So it's not only anymore like Ethereum, Bitcoin, and only blue chip tokens on very popular chains. You can go crazy, for example, on one of the hackathons, a user, a developer, created a feed for individual refugees from Ukraine recorded across Europe. And this is a data from a couple of weeks ago, I believe. It's already 8 million. So you can create some more emotional, let's say, data on chain. And let's say every, I don't know, 1,000, you make a smart contract that donates some stuff, right? So you can go more creative, not only the heavy DeFi that we've seen so far. Also, we have stake tokens, commodities, Forex, and so on and so forth. One thing that is super important in oracles that I would like you to always verify when you're choosing yours is where the data comes from, and if you can see which specific transaction, okay, one is seeing the data sources in general, and the other thing is seeing who sent the price feed for a specific transaction. So I can, for example, list all the data sources we have over here, but then when you request a price feed, I can only include, let's say, 10% of them. So it's also important that you can see on-chain who are the final data providers. So there are various sources like off-chain providers, market makers, centralized exchanges, price aggregators, but also on-chain sources like DEXs, LP tokens, liquid stake tokens, NFT data, and much more. Benefits of such design are already kind of covered, but let me recap. So it's scalable, it covers a lot of data, it has a very short update interval. So right now we have 10 seconds, and we try to go sub-second to finally meet the TradFi guys' expectations to create even more DeFi primitives, and it's cross-chain by design within EVMs. Let me show you how it works in practice. So Delta Prime is a protocol that allows you to, okay, let me call it gamble a bit. So you enter their protocol, they create a specific smart contract for you, and then this smart contract allows you to interact with many other protocols with under-collateralized loans. So, for example, you lock 1 AVAX, and then you can borrow up to 5 AVAX, but you cannot run away because the smart contract holds the condition upon which you can cash out from the casino, let's call it. So you have a DApp user with some collateral, let's call it Ether. You have 1 Ether, and then Delta Prime creates a Prime account, a specific Prime account for you. You can lock up this 1 Ether, you can borrow up to 5. Then RedStone provides data for a solvency bot that checks the solvency every 10 seconds. So if you had updates every 15 minutes, Within 15 minutes in DeFi, everything can just crumble down. So you need something more accurate. Therefore, 10 seconds is something that we can keep up with 5x loan. And then with RedStone price feeds, with this smart contract, you can interact, for example, on Avalanche with DEXs like Trader Joe, staking protocols like Yieldiac, or even have very interesting delta-neutral strategies with liquidity mining with GLP and GMX tokens. So this is just one of the use cases for this on-demand core model and the possibilities. And now I'm going to recap through what I've said during the presentation. What are the tips and misconceptions and tricks? So the number one misconception is Oracle deliver all kinds of data. I would like you to remember that right now it's not the case, like we are not there yet, maybe in the future, but you have to remember that with delivering data on-chain and to dApps, there's always a cost. And in order to justify this cost, you have to create like a viable business model, right? Like a viable use case. And so far, it's been mainly for price feeds within DeFi. Second misconception is on-chain delivery is cheap. As I said, like you have multiple networks. Usually, storage is panelized. So unless you have a very specific blockchain that is dedicated to storage, then it's quite expensive. Misconception number 3 is one Oracle fits it all. So you create like something that is super standardized, and you just try to push it to every client. And it turns out you cannot make a lot of diversity with that such an approach. So perpetuals have different expectations, lending has different expectations, LSTs have different expectations. So you just have to talk with developers and the clients to understand them all. Trick number 1 is you can add a payload to EVM transactions. And I will go right now even, again, step forward, because right now these data packages are about price feeds, but it can be anything else. And we created a proof of concept of Know Your Degen Oracle. So a soft version of KYC, where the payload is not a price feed anymore. It's rather the information whether your smart contract should accept a transaction from a given address or not. So imagine you create a rule that every address that has ever interacted with Tornado Cash cannot interact with my smart contract. You implement this KYD Oracle within your smart contract, and then before the transaction is executed, it dodges the transactions from the Tornado Cash users. So then you can have like a soft version of KYC, because right now its regulatory aspect is a very heavy one, especially in the United States. Trick number 2 is utilize storage networks to optimize costs. And that's like in general, like if you have a part of your flow or dApp that is data heavy, then think about offloading part of it outside and then making, like, for example, async or any other rule to update. Tip number 1 is verify how a dApp actually uses an Oracle. And as I mentioned, a perpetual is going to use it differently than other types of protocols. Web3 betting is going to use it differently. Tip number 2 is while DeFi syncs, if you're a developer or you're a builder and right now figure out what to build next, there is a huge spring, in my opinion, when it comes to perpetuals, LSTs, and stables, maybe CDPs more specifically. So I'm not encouraging you to build another one because it's going to be saturated soon, but maybe you can think of anything that you can build atop of them, right? Because if it's a trend right now, then in a couple of months, there are going to be other protocols that utilize already a stable ecosystem of these protocols. Last but not least, always verify data sources and transparency. So look, if you integrate an Oracle, you can check on every transaction who delivered the price, so like the price feed or any other data type for you. And I'm going to give you a real case example. Do you remember this exchange, like kind of a niche one, FTX? I suppose some of you do. I hope none of you have lost huge funds over there. So remind yourself this turmoil that happened over then. And imagine your protocol takes data from an Oracle. And now, FTX was a data source for a majority of oracles on the market. It was a big player, had a lot of liquidity, so of course you pulled data from them. And now, if you couldn't see at that time that you were fetching data from FTX, when FTX was stopping, you wouldn't have been able to decide whether your app is malfunctioned because of the whole market crash or any other reason, or because you consume data from FTX. If you have this whole transparency, you as a wise developer, let's say, when you see that FTX has problems and you remember that you consume data from FTX, if your dApp is upgradable, and that's whole another topic, but usually they are, you know how it is, usually you have a backdoor to upgrade your contract. You should quickly upgrade your contract and, for example, disregard that kind of a feed because you are aware. So the more transparency and the more aware you are, the more like capabilities you have to react to market crashes or any black swan events. So this is the last slide. I would like to invite all of you to E4SO conference and a hackathon that happens at the end of August. It's happening in a beautiful 19th century building. It's Warsaw University of Technology. We are going to have great speakers like Stani, Alex, a couple of others, big names like ZK Sync, Arweave, Scroll, like also joining. So we'd like to invite you all, also like EVE Belgrade's organizers for sure. Thank you a lot. You can catch me after the presentation if you have any follow-up questions. And yeah, thanks.
Any questions right now?
Oh, I didn't know there is a time for questions. Okay.
Oh yeah, we have time, You have 10 minutes, so go wild.
Okay, so maybe anyone has a question right now. Okay.
Hi, thanks for the nice presentation and good luck on your endeavors. Does this mean that the smart contracts that want to interact with this, so to implement this solution, will need to change? For example, can you use this on Uniswap or anywhere else that wants to integrate this oracle? Or is it based on smart contracts? So if I want to make a smart contract, I will need to integrate with this oracle, maybe with Chainlink oracle, and different kind of oracles. Is that right? Because the data is coming directly from MetaMask, as I understand. So the input data for the smart contract function needs to account for that and probably check for signature.
Yeah, so when the data comes to the smart contract, of course, like the signature is verified of the data package, whether it comes from a verified data source. And then to your question, if a dApp can create like a model where the on-chain storage is not necessary, like this Delta Prime guys, then you don't need like any secondary oracle. But in many cases, for example, right now the design of Aave or other big protocols like Compound, they are very robust, have gone through multiple audits. It's like fireproof, at least all of us should hope that nothing bad happens. So of course, for them, implementing something innovative like this would be a struggle. So therefore, we created this RedStone Classic model, where you have a familiar interface and also like the smart contract of hours on chain that you can call. So it very, as I said, depends use case to use case. But to sum it up, also I heavily advise to try to implement more than one oracle in the design, because then you always have more redundancy, as long as the costs allow you. Because if you're talking about, let's say, I don't know, Arbitrum, where the storage is still affordable, it maybe makes sense. But on Ethereum, usually it doesn't because it's just too expensive. Thanks.
Hey, Marcin. I was surprised to hear you say that you think sometimes it's necessary to have backdoors in contracts. And I wonder if you can just speak a little bit more about that. Are there like interesting ways of having safety guarantees in contracts that don't give unnecessarily privileges to certain groups of people? So like the ESM and Maker, or these kinds of examples of like security and safety modules that do shut things down, but not in a way that can be easily manipulated. Like, what are the examples of that in the industry that you're most interested in at the moment?
Oh, okay. So that's, as I said, it's totally different topic, and the title of the whole presentation could be like permissionless or unkillable smart contracts, good or bad. I'm going to talk about my personal belief. My personal belief is, unless you're super established and a long-lasting project, you should probably have maybe not. You should have a way to react to black swan events, especially when you are getting hacked. Everyone, like, look, for the past couple of months, we've seen so many hacks. Like, even like, okay, on top of my head, Euler. 2 days ago unstiff, and so on and so forth. So as long as something is even like growing hot and super cool, I can give you another example, like Libra Finance. Right now is like the one that is rocking. I mean, their TVA is growing, everyone is looking at them, and it might be a very good protocol, but imagine like right now, as far as I know, they have like $2 million in TVL, and imagine on Tuesday they have an attack, and because they created it super permissionlessly, they cannot react. And they are super young. So does it make sense? I don't know. Like from my perspective, if you do something innovative in the very beginning, especially in the early days, you should be transparent that you leave a backdoor for yourself, and then the users that are like maxis will not interact with it, but you should also be looking for a way to get rid of this backdoor as you progress. When you learn, when you have, for example, a couple of years already of experience, you've seen shit, you've seen like market like turbulence and everything, then you can at one point probably like decide, okay, this is fine. Now I believe it's ready that I'm going to give away this backdoor. At least, and again, that's my personal take. It's nothing that I prepared for the presentation. I'm also not a subject matter expert, but I've just seen a lot of shit. I've seen people like truly crying because, oh my God, I have all my funds on this like this hacked protocol. What can I do, right? Yeah. Okay, I think this is it. Nothing else. No.
Thank you very much, man.
Thanks
One more
a lot.
applause. Come on.